because of their significant needs, they will be looking to be in adult day services. And that's where you explain here. Those kind of kids is really hard. Really, really hard.
And how I've always been trained to look at it is you're not looking, we're not supposed to focus on where the child is right now. These are post-secondary goals. These are things that are gonna happen after high school. So what do we want them to be able to do? So just because we maybe think right now there's maybe no job tasks that they can do, where do we want to get them? What would we ultimately like them to do? That's what you need to think about. Okay. If you look at the student with significant cognitive disability, this is kind of put together for that type of student. We have a lot of students like that where we sell some of those discussions with. So, and it's a good point that just because this is the way that I'm training and showing you guys how to do it with in this, I would say, on-the-job training, you need to, whatever building you're in, whatever school district you're in, you need to make sure that you're connecting with, if you have I'm a PTP administrator in my district, so I have to oversee all the PTPs. I'm the one that submits them to DPI and makes sure that they're compliant. I'm gradually changing that over into the staff once we get a better handle on it. So kind of have to go by what your district
And
really
in
tells you
Milwaukee
to
Public
do.
Schools, all of you guys have a transition coordinator in your building. If you don't know who that is, you need to find out who that is because they're kind of your go-to person. But your supervisor is the one that kind of will get a report after you submit your PTPs. They'll get a report on if they were compliant or whatever, and then they'll come to you. So.
Okay, any other questions in this section? Alright, so this is where we plug in, this is a post-secondary goal in the area of employment. Every student has to have an employment goal. Like I said, I know some people, some families, some students might not feel like they're ready for employment. You've got to be thinking about post-secondary, after high school, where do they want to be. They've really done a nice job of making this, when it first came out, there wasn't a ton of jobs on here, a ton of careers on here, and it was very difficult to try to match your student. Because again, you have to use the drop downs, can't use the other button, even though they offered it here. So let's say for this example, we had a student who was interested in manufacturing and production and the computer-controlled machine tool operator. As you can see, they get very, very specific. I would recommend, this is another one of those things you might want to explore before you get into an IEP meeting if you're going to be creating these, because it can be very cumbersome to be going through all the drop-downs because there's so many different things that so many options for careers on here. So if you want to get down to the specific one that fits best for that student, if you can't find it, you just can't find that right. I know with engineering, there's a few engineering areas that they don't have on here. So I pick one that's the closest, and then you go down in the box down here and say, the student wants to be a mechanical engineer or something or whatever if it wasn't in the drop down. But you just have to use these drop downs and select something that's close. If you have a student that's kind of toying between a couple of things, then use your drop downs for one of them, and then in that box enter the other one. It's kind of like that backup plan. What other things are you looking at? Question?
Yeah, is there a menu to look at as far as, because I ran into this very problem of trying to go through it and try to plug it in on my own, and it was rejecting it, and then ultimately ended up finding it in an area that I didn't think I would find it. But is there a menu?
There's actually, I'm afraid I'm gonna, maybe I won't lose what I have. Yep, on this first page where I went into the PTP initially, there's a lot of really great resources down here that you can use. There's training modules on how to do all these things, how to, anything from, starting a PTP to submitting it to DPI. There is also down here some really nice stuff for the career clusters where you can go in and you can search, and it will tell you, kind of give you the best path to get to that job.
There's the one above it, that graph.
Yes, this is a list.
Yeah. And then you can get this off of there too. And I printed that out and just had it because it has most of the clusters on there.
You guys see that very well? So, but there are a lot of resources on here to help you kind of figure that piece out. So you don't have to necessarily go through and drop down and explore everything.
And some of them, did they change, like, it was hard to find, a lot of kids wanna work in a restaurant, and it was hard to find that, you had to go under, hospitality. And that took a while for us to find out.
Yeah. Or you can search over here by career name and try to get us, get you as close as you. I haven't had much luck with that button. I don't know if you use that
No.
a lot, but I haven't had much luck with it. I've just done
Anything
the-
I put in there, they never matched.
Yeah. But it is there as an option if you wanted to try it. There is also, all of these careers on here match with the Wisconsin Career Pathway clusters. And you can actually have students go in here, go in up here, and it's a free site available to all. What do you guys have in your schools as far as like career exploration? Do you have WIS careers or career cruising?
Career cruising.
MPS has career cruising.
Yeah.
WIS careers, I don't remember. But Career Pathways is another somewhat similar resource. It's free though. You just have to have your school's ACT code, or they call it the key code on here, I think. But we can show you, I'll show you that when we get into the transition assessment piece. But there's a really quick interest inventory you can have the kids do. It's like 4 pages. It takes about 10 minutes for the students to do, and then it will pop up some jobs, and the jobs will directly correlate with the options that they have here, which is kind of nice. So I had all of our students go on last year and do this. So at least when those kids, you get a lot of kids, especially at the middle school level, it's really hard to say, oh, what do you want to do when you're, what do you want to do when you grow up? Well, they're 14. Well, they want to be pro basketball players and, singers and models. And so having them take something like this can usually get you kind of whittled down to a little bit more realistic of a goal, if you can do that. Sometimes you have students that, they're pretty stuck on, they're going to be the next Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers. And that's when you need to have those conversations, and they're not even on the football team. That's my favorite one. I actually had seniors where they're going to be pro basketball players. Well, are you on the basketball team right now? Well, no. So that's when you want to have those conversations about, well, what is it about that that's appealing to you? Is it just being around a team, being part of that, being around sports? And then you can usually kind of whittle it away to something that's a little bit more realistic of a goal that way. Those can be very difficult conversations to have. So then the next goal is where appropriate. So the IEP team determines if this is appropriate or not. The IEP must contain a post-secondary goal related to independent living skills. So the first thing you're going to decide as an IEP team is this necessary? Does the child have a need, or the student have a need for independent living skill goal? And remember, this is a post-secondary goal, so after high school. So we'll just say yes. And then you can enter the goal. Now, independent living skill goals, they really want us to be, just 1 second, they really want us to be specific to skills. So for example, with meal prep, or laundry, or self-care. It's not after high school demo will live at home, or will live in a dorm, or will live in a group home. It's really, they want us to be specific to those skills. Is that what you guys have been told? It's not what you guys have been told.
That's okay.
This is a different
Yeah.
districts. Okay, so what kind of goals do you guys have?
It was always living where they were going to live,
Okay.
so.
We were always told we had to be specific to the skills. Did you have a question?
Yeah, can you say no to that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you might have students with, learning disabilities that just don't have any real functional concerns in that area, and you can look at that. There's actually a pretty, relatively smaller, percentage of students that really need that independent skill. Because you gotta remember, if you're gonna put an independent living skill goal, if there's things that they wanna be able to master when they leave high school, you better be doing something during high school to get them some training and to get them to do something to get them there. It's not just you put it out there and then leave it go and keep your fingers crossed that they can do that. It also has to be measurable.
So the example on this, this draft, a student with significant cognitive disabilities, that's a bad example.
Yeah, I bet I did that.
Reside
before.
with his parents.
Yes, that's no longer, I was told we can't do that anymore. So
Okay.
cross that off on there, thank you for catching that.
especially the reside with their parents, we were told no, because they're already doing that, so how can that be a
That
goal?
can be a goal.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for catching that.
But it could be like improve their ability to, take care of themselves so they can live in a group home. Because you have to have a certain amount of self-care to be able to qualify to live in a group home.
Yeah.
So then that could be a goal, that they have to be able to bathe themselves or whatever.
Again, we just gotta make sure that it's measurable. This question, always check yes. You should always be able to look at your annual goals within your IEP, and there should be at least one that you're working on to support that student in their transition goals. Everything we do every day is, whether teachers want to admit it or not, is you're working towards creating independence in that student and helping them to be the best they're gonna be and achieve their goals after high school. I think I've probably looked at about 600 of these PTPs or transition plans before we got the PTP process, and I think one time I just couldn't quite look at the annual goal. I just couldn't quite figure out how the annual goal would match up to support the transition goal. Otherwise, this is usually it should be a given, because everything we're working on is getting ready, that student ready for post-secondary. So, and you can enter them if you want. I don't really see, it gets kind of redundant because it's also entered in another part of the IEP. So just checking yes is compliant. I just want to make sure you don't tell your staff to enter them in the, okay. I think it's easier to just say yes. I tell people say yes and move on.
But then make sure that the goals that you write directly correlate to their post-secondary goal. So if you're talking about having the student go on to college, then all your goals in the IEP should be getting them academically ready for college. So then they would match.
Yeah.
But if you've got that they're going to college and your goal is, I don't know, totally not related, then, so you have to make sure that they match.
Like I said, typically, I don't know what your experience has been, but I have never had it. This has never really been an issue with us.
Every once in a while.
All right, this next section, this is, if you guys look on the samples I gave you, again, these are best practice. We rarely see IEPs that are this thorough. The nice thing
But
about,
it'd be great if they were.
I know, that's why I do this. The nice thing about this new way we're doing transition now with the PTP is that once you've created a post-secondary transition plan, you just go in every year and tweak it, review, revise it. You're not starting your paperwork over from scratch. So, for example, if you have PTP and you go in that first year and put in the services, you kind of map out a 4-year plan, or however many years are left. I think we can do up to 5 years out. If you put together a really, kind of thorough, nice plan, every year after that, all you have to do is go in and kind of tweak it. Kind of make sure, check and see if you provided and did all the transition services and everything was done that was supposed to be done during that last school year. If it's not, you may need to move it to the next school year, or maybe the team determines that service is no longer needed. Maybe the goals of the student changed. There could be a lot of different things that happen there. But when you're only putting in services for the next year out, then you're really kind of getting yourself into a kind of a bad cycle, because then every year you're going to have to be adding services and you're always kind of playing catch up. Whereas if you have a nice plan, you kind of know, okay, this is where we're going and this is how we're going to get there. Does that make sense? This can be very tricky for people, because there are a lot of services on here. There are a lot of different options. There are, I believe there's 7 different categories in the drop down here that you can go to. I highly recommend you can, I'm not sure if it's on this site actually, the transition services, is there a bullet on here?
There wasn't nice. We had a really old printout of it.
Yeah, we did too. I gave all of my staff, and I'm sorry I should have brought that for you guys tonight. There is a printout that you can get that pulls out, there's some other resources that pulls out all the different services, so you can just have, you can even send that home to parents and say, okay, here's all the drop downs on the PTP for the transition services. What do you think is going to be needed? The biggest thing with the transition services, and I think sometimes this kind of freaks teachers out, they think, oh my gosh, if I put all these services, like they see this and they think, how on earth am I gonna be able to do all this? Well, if you look at it, a lot of things on here need to be done by the family. A lot of things need to be done by the student. You are not the only person on the IEP team that is responsible for transition. In fact, that student is the number one person responsible. They need to take ownership of this. The family, they're the ones that are gonna be there to support that student after you're gone. So they need to be invested and they need to take some ownership of some of these things. But you need to make sure that when you're putting together this set of services that you're having those conversations with the student, with the family members. You're not just putting things down that they're gonna do and then not sharing it with them or not having that conversation, not letting them commit to actually doing those things. So this is also one area, and maybe you guys have been told different, this is one area that you can use the other section, because every district may offer transition services or a certain activity or workshop that's specific to their district. So that's when you'd wanna use that other section, that other drop down to really be specific to what, you know, might occur in your district, or if there's something special that the parents do that doesn't fit in any of the drop downs, then you can enter it in here. For example, in Elmbrook, we have a program called Project Strive. It's for our students from 19 to 21 that have cognitive disabilities or autism, and it's entirely community-based. We have an apartment, and all the instruction takes place in community settings. Kids go to work, they go to the Y to work out, they volunteer when they're doing their independent living skills, or at the apartment, making lunch, going to the grocery store. So that's specific, but that's a very specific program to our district. So if that's something that a student needs, then we can enter that under other, under instruction, and actually put, you know, students kind of participate in our 19 to 21 program, Project Strive. Okay? There is, this is a newer section, I don't know if you guys use this considered but not needed button. Do you guys ever use that?
No, we have, because you have to do it for these other activities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but where you put something in.
Oh, yeah.
And say, okay, we talked about demonstrating safety precautions in the home, but we decided they didn't need it. So then you'd add it.
Oh, no,
Yeah, we were actually told we have to do that, at least at King, that if you go through it,
that's
you
new,
talk
that
that stuff
wasn't on there
over.
last year.
Yeah, that was put on at the
Yeah.
very end. So I'm sorry, you were told you had to use it?
Yeah, so even if you only
Really?
had one out of those 7, just good practice that you would at least look at all of them and discuss it with the student and the family. So
Oh,
even
you
if
went
you're not
into every
considering it,
section.
yeah.
I
Oh, you
see.
looked at
Yeah.
all 7?
Yeah, and then if it, the last one I had, I think I had 2 on there that we used, but everything else we had to look at and then just
Say it was
consider but
considered
not
but not
needed.
rejected.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was specific to his school. We don't use this. For minimal compliance, you have to at least have one goal, or excuse me, one transition service. If you want to go through each section, all the 7 drop downs up here, you can. Do you guys have any recommendations for NPS? Or specific to you guys?
No, you have to listen to what your supervisors say, because when we first started using these, we call them coordinated set of activities. When we first started, you had to have something in each of the 7 categories. So you really just need to pay attention to what your school and what your supervisor says, because that could be different. It shouldn't be different between building, but it might be different in the district. If you have a kid where you had a living goal, you better have something in here that corresponds to that. There better be something in there that you better have, acknowledge who is going to help that student, or what types of things they're going to be doing to get them ready to live either independently or maybe develop more skills so they can live in a group home, or whatever type of living situation. We were told that you always have to have employment in there, and how you're going to get them to where they want to be. A lot of the stuff you would cover in here is like transportation. How are they going to get around? Are they going to have to be bus trained? Are they going to get a driver's license? Are they going to need Transit Plus so that they get a van to pick them up? That all these things are things that you want to make sure you're talking about, because even a student who might be pretty high functioning, they still might need to be bus trained because mom and dad drive them everywhere. Well, when you're all done and you're all grown up, mom and dad might not want to be able to, drive you, so, that's the kind of stuff we have to look at. I think that this is one of the most important parts, because this is what makes it an actual living document. Because these are the activities, these are the things, these are the people that you're gonna pull in to help that student reach their goals. They've got their goal, they wanna be a plumber. What are all the things that we have to get them exposed to, or what are all the things we have to do as a team to get them closer to that? And that's where all these things fall in.
That's really why you start with the goal in the PTP. You start off by picking the goal, and then you kind of work your way back. Okay, this is your ultimate goal here. What are the steps that we need to do, kind of working our way back? What are the steps that we need to do to get there? What are the things we need to be working on now, next year, and so on?
And I don't know what the Milwaukee teachers were told last year, we had to do 2 years. I really encourage people to, like you said, do the whole plan, because then you know where you're going. You might have a student that needs a lot of stuff. Well, I'd rather have it all on here, and then, like she said, just take it off as they reach that, or switch it up as, different things happen. But, if you only have 1 year on here, then next year you get there and you're like, so, now what are we gonna do? But if you do at least 2 to 3, hopefully even 4, then you have a nice plan. This is a transition plan for them. So these are the things that you're, gonna help them with, that the family's gonna help, that everybody else is gonna come together, so that they have, something to go off of, what's gonna happen next.
Any questions on the transition services?
So then